Every October, the Conjuring House trends again, but this year is different because The Haunting got a Hollywood sequel. There's a cancelled auction, a mystery buyer, and apparently comedian Matt Rife now thinks he owns the Warrens' Haunted Museum. Yeah. The man who's been cancelled more times than Annabelle's containment spell just became guardian of the most cursed doll in America. Welcome to the Conjuring Universe, where everything's haunted, including the PR. Let's start where it all began. 1677 Round Top Road, Harrisville, Rhode Island. The old Arnold estate. Built in the 1700s, it's one of those houses that looks haunted even in daylight. Slanted porch, peeling shutters, the kind of place that always feels like it's watching you back. In 1971, Roger and Carolyn Perron moved in with their 5 daughters, chasing that idyllic New England farmhouse dream. Within days, that dream packed its bags and left. Things got weird fast. Brooms vanished and reappeared in random rooms. Clocks stopped at the same minute every night, and their dog refused to cross the threshold, which, if your pet nopes out first, that is your first red flag right there. The girls started waking up to whispers in the dark, soft voices calling their names from corners that didn't exist. Doors would creak open on their own, and once, a pile of dirt appeared in the middle of the kitchen floor, like the ghost was trying to start an avant-garde art project. Eventually, the parents realized it wasn't just one spirit, but several. Some friendly, some malicious, but one name stood out: Bathsheba Sherman. According to local legend, Bathsheba was a 19th century woman accused of witchcraft, rumored to have sacrificed her infant to the devil before hanging herself from a tree behind the house. Neighbors whispered that her soul cursed the land forever. Sounds cinematic, right? That's because it is. The real Bathsheba did exist, but there's no record of any trial, sacrifice, or satanic hobby. She lived to her 70s, died of a stroke in 1885, and had a perfectly respectable church funeral. So, not quite the demon boss level Hollywood gave her, more like misunderstood small town woman turned horror icon. Still, something in that house was off. Carolyn Perron swore she once saw a woman with a broken neck standing in the corner of her bedroom. Andrea Perron, the eldest daughter, said shadows would stretch across the ceiling and whisper her name. They weren't looking for fame. They were terrified. The family called in Ed and Lorraine Warren, hoping for peace. Instead, they got history. The Perrons kept journals of the hauntings for nearly a decade. Andrea later published them in House of Darkness, House of Light, describing doors slamming, furniture shaking, and a phantom stench of rotting flesh that followed Carolyn from room to room. Local historians confirmed 8 generations of families had lived and died in that farmhouse, including 1 documented suicide by hanging, 2 drownings, and a child's mysterious death in the cellar. So while Bathsheba's legend was likely folklore, the death count on that land was very real. It's easy to see why the parents believed the house itself had a memory. In 2013, director James Wan turned their ordeal into The Conjuring, a film that changed horror overnight. It didn't rely on gore or lazy jumps. It built dread, slow, patient, inevitable. The camera moved like a ghost. The silence was the scare. For once, audiences didn't laugh when the lights flickered. They held their breath. The parents said it captured the feeling of their haunting almost perfectly, even if a few Hollywood demons got thrown in for the good measure. The internet screamed. The critics raved. And just like that, the quiet farmhouse on Round Top Road became the cornerstone of a billion-dollar horror universe. A Family's Nightmare became a franchise, and the ghosts of Harrisville got their own IMDb page. If the Perrons were the haunted, Ed and Lorraine Warren were the headline. They weren't just ghost hunters, they were the brand of the supernatural. The couple founded the New England Society for Psychic Research in 1952 and went on to investigate over 10,000 cases of alleged hauntings, possessions, and other things that go bump in the very expensive night. Ed was a self-taught demonologist, a title that sounds made up until you realize that he absolutely meant it. Lorraine described herself as a clairvoyant, gentle, soft-spoken, the kind of person who'd hold a rosary like a microphone to the spirit world. Together, they became America's ghost hunting sweethearts long before YouTube's night vision screaming trend and TikTok mediums with ring lights. They believed every haunting had two sides, one spiritual, one psychological. That evil fed on fear, and that faith could starve it. Their tools were simple: a crucifix, holy water, and unshakable confidence that they could walk into literal hell and walk back out with a story. But make no mistake, they were savvy. Ed and Lorraine weren't just investigating ghosts, they were archiving them. They toured, lectured, and wrote books documenting each case like paranormal journalists of the 20th century. If there was a haunting worth hearing about, chances are the Warrens had already sold the film rights. Their home in Monroe, Connecticut became something between a research lab and a cursed antique shop. The Warrens Occult Museum. Shelves lined with mirrors that allegedly trap spirits, voodoo idols, haunted paintings, and the now infamous Raggedy Ann doll locked in a glass case with a handwritten sign, positively "Do not open," which, of course, means someone definitely will. Before The Conjuring ever existed, the Warrens were already household names thanks to the Amityville horror case in 1976. They claimed the Lutz family's Long Island home was infested by demonic forces after a mass murder there 2 years earlier. Skeptics called it a hoax. Ed called it proof that evil lingers where blood is spilled. They also investigated the Smurl haunting in Pennsylvania and the Snedeker house in Connecticut, later adapted into the haunting in Connecticut. Whether genuine or embellished, those cases built the Warrens' reputation long before Hollywood gave them perfect lighting. To believers, they were heroes, warriors of light who stood between families and darkness. To skeptics, they were opportunists, blending theology, psychology, and showmanship. But either way, they did something no one else had managed. They made the paranormal mainstream. Faith became cinematic. Fear became profitable. And from that mix of courage, charisma, and cursed dolls, a horror empire was born. The Warrens didn't just open doors to the spirit world. They built an entire franchise out of it. So, like I said earlier, in 2013, director James Wan unleashed The Conjuring, starring Vera Farmiga and Patrick Wilson as Ed and Lorraine Warren, with the Perron family's haunting at its heart. The film didn't reinvent horror. It remembered it. Gone were the overused CGI monsters and cheap jump scares. This was slow terror. Camera pans that made you hold your breath. Doors that creaked like they were breathing. And simple children's game of clap clap in the dark that somehow traumatized an entire generation. One built the scares the old-fashioned way. Dread that crawls, not jumps. The camera lingered too long. The silence stretched too thin, and by the time you realized you were scared, it was already too late. In real life, the Perron family said the movie took some creative liberties, no shock there, but captured the essence of what they lived through. Andrea Perron, the eldest daughter, praised it for showing not just the fear, but the feeling, the claustrophobia of living inside a house that felt like it was watching you back. She said, "Hollywood got it right emotionally. It was chaos, but it was home." Of course, a few things were dialed up for the box office. The exorcism scene, dramatic. The basement showdown, very Hollywood. The hanging witch screaming in Latin, 10 out of 10 for production value. Probably not in the family scrapbook. But The Conjuring did something most horror films never manage. It made people believe again. The story felt so real. The Warrens felt human, and the fear felt ancient. And in doing that, it accidentally built the foundation for one of the most successful horror franchises in modern history. What started as one haunted farmhouse turned into an entire cinematic ecosystem. Priests, dolls, nuns, curses, demons. A supernatural spiderweb so tangled it makes Annabelle's wig collection look organized. The Perrons got peace, but the Warrens got legacy, and horror got its heartbeat back. Next in the franchise came Annabelle, because, let's be honest, you can't build a horror franchise without a little merch. Every great ghost story eventually gets its mascot, and The Conjuring's was a doll with attitude. The real Annabelle wasn't the cracked porcelain doll we see in the films. She was a floppy, wide-eyed Raggedy Ann doll, gifted to 2 nursing students in the 1970s. According to them, the doll would move by itself, cross its legs, even leave handwritten notes that said things like, "Help me." One friend reportedly mocked her, and later crashed his motorcycle after leaving the Warrens' home. Whether that's coincidence or cosmic karma, I'll let you decide. When Ed and Lorraine Warren examined the case, they concluded the doll wasn't haunted at all. It was possessed by an inhuman entity pretending to be the ghost of a child. They brought the doll home, blessed it, and locked it in a wooden and glass case inside their occult museum under a priest's supervision. Across the front, they hung a handwritten sign that read, "Positively do not open," which, of course, is exactly what someone would do in every movie ever. Then Hollywood got hold of her and went full chaos mode. Annabelle 2014, a cursed porcelain doll tied to a satanic cult. Annabelle Creation 2017, the doll's tragic origin story. Set in the 1950s with an orphanage, a grieving toy maker, and a lot of doors that really needed locks. Annabelle Comes Home 2019. The Warrens' daughter gets left with a babysitter who accidentally opens the museum's cursed cabinet and basically unleashes Spirit Halloween on the entire house. Annabelle didn't just become a movie star. She's become the franchise's logo. The Warrens had faith. Hollywood had sequels, and somewhere in Monroe, Connecticut, that little Raggedy Ann doll is still sitting behind glass, collecting royalties. The nurses in the original Annabelle case kept detailed logs, the doll changing positions, leaving notes written on parchment paper they didn't own, and even smearing what looked like blood on its hands. When the Warrens took it, they claimed the doll levitated. It's been locked in that glass case ever since, periodically re-blessed by local priests. In 2020, a rumor that she'd escaped the museum went viral, forcing the Warren family to post proof she was still safely locked up. A 21st century haunting in real time. Then came The Conjuring 2, James Wan's 2016 sequel based on one of Britain's most famous hauntings, the Enfield Poltergeist. London, 1977. A modest council house in a quiet suburb where, for one family, bedtime turned into a full-blown supernatural circus. 2 sisters, Janet and Margaret Hodgson, began reporting strange activity, knocking on walls, toys hurling themselves across the room, and furniture sliding like it was auditioning for The Exorcist on ice. Janet, the younger sister, even claimed to have been possessed by an old man spirit named Bill Wilkins, who, through her, growled details about dying in that very house. The voice recordings are still online. Imagine a 12-year-old girl speaking like your chain-smoking granddad.
Well, perhaps Guy, perhaps you've got something to say to them.
Yeah.
I'd like to know how you make this noise without bashing Janet's vocal cords to pieces. If I do it for half a minute, I get a sore throat.
Goose Chase is here.
Terrifying, fascinating, and a little sad all at once. Real investigators Maurice Gross and Guy Lyon Playfair from the Society for Psychical Research studied the case for over a year. They witnessed unexplained knocks, levitations, and dozens of physical disturbances. But even they admitted some moments looked suspiciously human. Janet herself later said, "Some of it was real, some of it wasn't." Which honestly might be the most honest paranormal quote ever. And the Warrens, they showed up once, maybe twice, and weren't officially part of the investigation. But Hollywood took one look at that and said, cool story, what if the Warrens were there the whole time, saving England and their marriage at the same time? So The Conjuring 2 became part ghost story, part love letter to Faye, and part slow burn romance about exorcisms and emotional trauma. It's moody, it's heartfelt, and it's occasionally Catholic fan fiction, and it introduced us to Valak, the demon nun now haunting your Pinterest boards and Halloween party invites. Valak wasn't part of the real Enfield case. That's pure cinematic invention, but the aesthetic, iconic. Crosses flipping, nuns floating, Latin chanting. Whether you believe the Enfield haunting was genuine or just the world's longest ghostly prank, one thing is certain, it gave the Conjuring Universe its most haunting villain, and James Wan his ticket to demon movie royalty. The Enfield investigation produced over 30 hours of audio recordings, police statements, and photographs. In one tape, the entity called itself Bill Wilkins, gave his full name, and said, "I died in that chair," later matched to an actual former resident. Police officers signed reports saying they saw furniture move without visible cause. Skeptics countered that many incidents happened off camera, and Janet herself later admitted to faking a few moments. The Society for Psychical Research still calls the case inconclusive but compelling. After London's ghosts, the Conjuring Universe decided to go full gothic, and in 2018 we got The Nun. The film and its 2023 sequel, The Nun II, dives into the backstory of Valak, the demon who first gatecrashed The Conjuring 2. The story follows a young novitiate, Sister Irene, sent to investigate a remote abbey where a nun has taken her own life. Spoiler: bad things happen when the Vatican sends people into foggy castles without Wi-Fi. Inside, she discovers the abbey isn't holy ground anymore. It's a prison for something unholy. Enter Valak, a demon masquerading as a nun, using religion's imagery against itself. Corridors lined with crosses, candles that blow out on their own, and enough Gregorian chanting to make Spotify's algorithm panic. There's no real Warren case file for The Nun. It's pure cinematic lore, but the name Valak does come from medieval grimoires, like the Lesser Key of Solomon. In those texts, Valak, sometimes spelt Ualak or Valu, I'm not sure if I'm saying those right, is described as a childlike angel who rides a dragon and commands serpents. So basically a 1600s D&D villain that Hollywood rebranded as a terrifying nun. Smart move, honestly. Snakes don't sell tickets, but creepy clergy do. The Nun 2 picks up years later, following Sister Irene again as Valak's curse spreads across Europe, because apparently demons love sequels too. It connects the dots between the Abbey's events and the Warrens' future cases, weaving faith, trauma, and jump scares into a gothic horror fever dream. If The Conjuring House is a haunted sermon, The Nun is the music video. All style, shadows, and slow motion blasphemy. It doesn't need to be real to be iconic. It just needs one good flickering candle and a face you'll never forget. Then came The Conjuring 3, The Devil Made Me Do It, the movie that proved you can mix exorcism with legal drama and somehow make it work. It's based on the 1981 case of Anne Cheyenne Johnson, a 19-year-old from Connecticut who became the first person in US history to claim demonic possession as a murder defense. Here's how it started. The Warrens were performing an exorcism on an 11-year-old boy named David Glatzel, who was said to be tormented by multiple demons. During the ritual, Anne, the boyfriend of David's older sister, reportedly shouted, "Take me instead." Hours later, witnesses said the boy convulsed, then went calm. The Warrens claimed the demon had accepted the invitation and moved into Arnie. Months later, Arnie got into an argument with his landlord, Alan Bono, and stabbed him multiple times with a pocket knife. His defense? The devil made him do it. Literally. The Warrens backed him up, saying they'd seen signs of possession for weeks after the exorcism. They documented it, told police it was real, and even warned that something dark would happen. When it did, they stood by Arnie publicly, making national headlines and dragging the supernatural straight into a Connecticut courtroom. The judge didn't buy the defense. The court refused to allow demonic possession as a legal argument, saying that there's no way to prove it in evidence. Arnie was convicted of first-degree manslaughter, sentenced to 10 to 20 years, but only served 5 for good behavior, which honestly is wild because if you claim a demon made you stab someone and only do 5 years, that's either divine mercy or really good PR. The film version took that real case and ran with it, turning it into a blend of courtroom thriller and supernatural mystery. Think Law and Order, Possession Victims Unit. There's an exorcism in the first 10 minutes, a murder mystery in the middle, and by the end of it, it's a full-heart horror. Whether you believe Arnie was truly possessed or just a desperate young man in over his head, the case blurred the line between faith, psychology, and law, and showed how the Warrens had become more than investigators. They were now myth makers, mediating between the real and the unreal, one headline at a time. And as far as the courtroom horror goes, this one set the precedent. Court records show defense attorney Martin Minella really did try to plead demonic possession. Citing the Warrens' notes and recordings, Judge Robert Callahan immediately rejected it, saying, "The court will not entertain a defense based on theological determinism." The Warrens later released audio from the exorcism where David Glatzel's voice allegedly changed pitch and growled obscenities. To this day, both Arnie and the Glatzel family maintain something inhuman was involved here. Then we drift to the 1970s Los Angeles, where the Curse of La Llorona steps out of myth and into the Conjuring Universe. This one isn't about haunted houses or possessed dolls. It's about grief that refuses to die. La Llorona, the Weeping Woman, is one of the oldest and most haunting legends in Latin American folklore. The story changes depending on where you're from, but it always starts the same way. A beautiful woman drowns her children in a river, realizes what she's done, and spends eternity roaming the earth, crying, searching, and punishing anyone who hears her wails near water. Every kid who grew up in Latin America knows her name. She's the bedtime story parents tell to keep you away from creeks after dark. And even if you don't believe, the second you hear water running at night, you remember her. In the movie, we jump to Los Angeles in 1973, where a social worker investigates a strange case of child neglect and accidentally releases the wrath of La Llorona herself. It's moody, tragic, and dripping, literally, with atmosphere. She's less ghost, more grief incarnate, showing that horror doesn't always need demons. Sometimes guilt is enough. While the Curse of La Llorona isn't a direct Warren case, it's loosely tethered to the franchise through Father Perez, the priest from Annabelle, who pops up to remind us this is the same cursed cinematic neighborhood. So, not officially a Warren file, more of a spiritual cameo. Culturally rich legend? Absolutely. Historical case file? No. But she earns her spot in the Conjuring Universe as the franchise's creepiest side quest. The kind of ghost story that doesn't need Latin chanting or possessed dolls, just a mother's cry echoing down an empty riverbank. Because in this universe, even the side stories have unfinished business. Versions of La Llorona date back to Aztec mythology, the goddess that I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce her name, who mourned her lost children before the Spanish conquest. 16th century colonial records describe a woman in white wailing near Mexico City's canals, warning of tragedy. Historians see her as a symbol of maternal grief and colonial guilt, proof that this ghost was haunting culture centuries before Hollywood found her. And finally, The Conjuring Last Rites. Released this year, it's the closing chapter of the main trilogy, and allegedly the swan song for one of horror's most consistent universes. This film steps into the twilight of Lorraine Warren's life, years after Ed's heart attack, when faith starts to feel heavier and the line between salvation and obsession begins to blur. The Warrens are older, slower, and haunted not just by demons anymore, but by the weight of everything that they've seen. The story takes them to Massachusetts, drawn into their final investigation, a haunting connected to a cursed relic supposedly linked all the way back to the Bathsheba Sherman era. It's part mystery, part reflection, the kind of horror that's less about what's in the shadows and more about what you carry home with you when the case ends. Last Rites isn't about the biggest scare or the flashiest demons. It's about faith, doubt, grief, the cost of spending a lifetime staring into the abyss. And it gives Lorraine, played with eerie grace by Vera Farmiga, the chance to show the quiet terror of a woman who spent decades hearing whispers in the dark, and now maybe realizes some of them were her own. If The Conjuring began with one haunted farmhouse, Last Rites ends with an empire built on love, fear, and a lot of cross necklaces. The Warrens didn't just document the paranormal, they turned it into a legacy, one that made audiences worldwide look twice when their door creaked at night. And whether you believe any of it or not, there's something poetic about the way it all circles back. Two people who dedicated their lives to fighting darkness, growing old under its weight, still choosing faith, still holding hands. Because in the end, that's what the Conjuring Universe was always really about. Not ghosts, not demons, but the idea that love, ridiculous, stubborn, human love, can still win in a world full of things we can't explain. And if that isn't the perfect last rite, I don't know what is. Last Rites is based on the haunting of the Smurl family in Pennsylvania. The family reported walls shaking, foul odors seeping through rooms, and even physical attacks from an unseen force. Today, the real Conjuring houses are still standing, quietly existing somewhere between history, folklore, and Airbnb nightmares. The Rhode Island farmhouse, where it all began, is privately owned. The current owners occasionally host overnight tours and paranormal investigations, and according to most visitors, yes, the weird energy is still there. Lights flicker, doors creak, and every once in a while, a camera battery dies right before something happens. Yes, I'm looking at you, Sam and Colby. Classic ghost behavior. Petty and dramatic. Current owners, Corey and Jennifer Heinzen, have reported lights turning on by themselves, doors slamming, and the sound of footsteps pacing overhead. Paranormal teams have captured EVPs of a woman whispering, "Help me," and thermal images of human-shaped cold spots. Corey told a reporter, "It's not evil, it's just busy." Meanwhile, the Warrens' Connecticut home, the one with Annabelle and the infamous occult museum has been closed to the public since the 2010s. The artifacts, including that very cursed Raggedy Ann doll, remain sealed and blessed under priestly supervision. It's less a museum now, more a very intense storage unit for bad decisions. And then of course comes 2025's most chaotic crossover event. Comedian Matt Rife and YouTuber Elton Casti announcing they've become legal guardians of the Warrens' artifact collection. Headlines screamed at this. Matt Rife buys the Conjuring house, which on closer inspection translates to he didn't buy anything, he just got custody of a doll with a body count. So yeah, technically he's not the homeowner, he's the haunted babysitter, which honestly is the only gig where ghost tours and bad PR have the same clientele. Because if there's one thing scarier than demonic possession, it's your name trending next to a haunted house drama and an apology video. So whether this is a genuine paranormal passion project or just the most cursed brand deal in history, one thing is for sure. The Conjuring legacy is still alive, still messy, and still finding new ways to haunt pop culture. Haunted house caretaker? Maybe. Haunted house PR stunt? Definitely. And that's the beauty of it. The ghosts might not be real, but the headlines sure are. Decades later, the Conjuring Universe still works, not because of the jump scares or the demons or even the cursed dolls, but because it's not really about ghosts. It's about belief. Every case, every movie, every late night seance asks the same question. What happens when you run out of logical answers? Do you surrender to fear or to faith? Ed and Lorraine believed that love and faith could fight evil. The Perrons believed their house had a soul, and Hollywood believed those stories could fill cinemas, and let's be honest, their pockets. But somehow they were all right, because even after a decade of sequels, spin-offs, and cursed collectibles, we're still talking about it, still watching, still wondering if maybe, just maybe, there is something on the other side. Maybe we'll never know which parts were real. And maybe that's the point. Because the uncertainty, that flicker between the seen and the unseen, is what makes it scary and kind of beautiful. The idea that somewhere out there between faith and folklore, the line between the living and the dead might still waver, just a little, like a candle in a quiet room. Thank you for spending time with me today, going through the entire Conjuring franchise and their real cases that they were inspired by. Don't forget to hit the like button if you enjoyed this video today and hit subscribe so you don't miss the next one. I will also link my socials below so you can find me on those. I also do have a Discord if you wanted to join that and join our spooky, fun, cozy little conversations. Please do so. Stay safe, sleep tight, and if you hear 3 knocks tonight, just tell Annabelle I said no.